Great pleasure to welcome back Professor Dr. Judy Wood.
Again, part two. Again, this was not a new Pearl Harbor. This is a new Hiroshima. Proof of concept. Showing off a new toy. Seen that one before? But it's better than this model. This model wiped out everything and wasn't very well controlled as to the after effects, and they couldn't just take out a few buildings without affecting the one across the street. So let's start looking at the dust. We have this picture I call the snowball picture, and this one I call the bubbler, Midwestern term for drinking fountain. Kind of looks like a bubbler. Those don't look like regular collapses. Is one dust cloud the same as another dust cloud? Are there differences? Let's start looking at the dust and see what we see. Well, here's one thing I started noticing. You have this two-toned color scheme. Dark on top, light on bottom. And then they start mixing up like they're put in a blender. Dark on top, light on bottom. Dark on top, light on bottom. I wonder if there's a significance to that. Well, as I said, I started coming up with a new vocabulary. There'll be a pop quiz at the end. The one that we should pay attention to, though, is dustification. I'm not saying how it was done, the exact mechanism, but something turned a solid building into a bunch of dust, a bunch of powder. So let's start looking at all the different phenomena and seeing what we come up with. Again, we assign just arbitrary terms to each phenomenon so we don't bias our observations. And I call this one Alka-Seltzer, or shaving cream. These are the steel wheat checks. They look like wheat checks, those outer column bundles. What is this trailing behind them so energetically? Same with this. With the same picture with motion in it, we see it's a smooth process. It's not a bundle here, bundle there. Oops, went too fast. So here we had the towers. This is what's left. Here's building 6. Building 6 towers over the rubble pile, missing all that material. And we know it didn't go down into the basement because we had those guys walking around looking for Roadrunner. And here are the path trains in February that were pulled out when they dug down to that level. In pristine condition, not a scratch on them. They probably had a few scratches, but they definitely weren't crushed. And that was underneath the area by building 1, between 1 and 2. And the path train actually was what goes under 2. But what I had done when looking through all of the data is just to start categorizing the dust. There's, dust that does one thing, dust that does another thing, and looking at how it changes with time. There's, right after both towers were gone, the wind was blowing towards the south, and north of the towers, you had a clear blue sky. It cleared out pretty quickly. And then the dust started increasing again. That was an interesting phenomenon. We'll get to seeing those pictures. And if the dust immediately settles out, you have a clear blue sky, and then you see dust start rising up from the pavement, what would cause that?
Dust or vapor? More dust?
Dust. It looks like really fine dust. But if it was fine dust settling out of the air, it doesn't settle out in 10 minutes. This is coarse dust that lands and then becomes fine dust. Yes?
My friend who lives there was a witness, and he starts going over his memories. He said his vision or his memory was it stood like a column, as though there was a column of dust that was standing. Then all of a sudden the wind came in, and the whole thing started blowing away. That was his memory.
One thing I started noticing in watching Rick Siegel's video, his new one, is when the dust comes down to the ground, pours out, it's very energetic, and then it slows down. It goes as far north as the pedestrian bridge, And I have a video clip of people just walking as the cloud's catching up to them, and then it goes upward. It doesn't keep going out. At that point, it starts boiling upward. So here we have the next stage. We have clouds going upward. Look at all this dust going up and out, and then we have this lighter stuff down below. We have the darker stuff up here, and then it starts moving outward. We're looking north across Statue of Liberty. Apparently the dust cloud was blowing towards Brooklyn that day. Remember that. And here's a view from the north. You can see the heaviest part of the dust cloud. The reason why I say note this is none of the dust samples USGS tested were in this area. They're elsewhere. You'll notice a particular design under areas 1 and 2. They look like little fingers sticking up. Turns out toasted cars were located there. And here's some of those toasted cars. I call this fuming. The car's not on fire. It wasn't burning. It was just becoming fumes. This was on Vesey Street, near the intersection of Church and Vesey. They just turned to dust and instantly rusted. See on the side of that one. Now, looking from the west, looking at West Street, you'll see patches here of dust. There's a car underneath each one of those denser dust columns. And you can see some brighter spots over in here where this is around the corner from where the cars were on fire. So here we are. The toasted lot hasn't quite gotten toasted yet. Here comes the cloud. Well, this cloud is from Tower 2 because Tower 1 is still standing. For whatever reason, the cloud from Tower 2 did not toast those cars. There it comes, goes on through. And you can see from this picture, there's the toasted lot. It's not on fire. But here's where Tower 1 goes poof. The numbers is hard to keep track of. Tower 2 went poof first, then Tower 1. And here's the toasted lot over there. It's about to get toasted. Again, before, and then soon to be after. And here's where it rolled down West Broadway. Now you can tell this is a dust cloud from Tower 1 because Tower 2 went this far, right to that point. But you'll see in dust patterns later that that's where Tower 1 went to, about a block difference. Gee, what was the distance the two towers were from these points? It's interesting. It goes out just that far, but notice how abruptly the dust from Tower 2 stopped. Like it has the exact distance it goes before it moves upward. Here is the cloud rolling out, and here's another image of dust from Tower 1. It comes out, this is looking from the west across the Hudson. It comes out like it's penned in, right to the edge of those buildings. It never spills over onto the grass over here. If you had a pizza pan or a cookie tray dropped on a pile of dust in the middle of your basement, you'd have a poof go out, and you'd have denser here, less dense, and less dense, and it'd have a decay kind of density. It wouldn't just abruptly stop. So there's the pedestrian bridge there, and this is looking from the west. It's approximately at that point. That's where the cloud from Tower 1 stopped.
The EPA did find spotty levels of asbestos. A sample on a police car turned out
This
dangerous.
is from a news
Another
video
sample a couple of blocks away,
right
not
after 9/11.
dangerous. But most interesting, in the mix, they are looking, they think, at specks of steel that used to be beams and elevators, marble from the lobby floor and facings. So what were once the strongest architectural elements in the two towers were pulverized, large portions turned into clouds like this one. Still, there is this mystery. If some of the hardest materials were vaporized, how...
The cloud stops right at the pedestrian walkway. We'll see that clip again later on. So we're looking from the south. Right where this outer bit of land stops, that's where the pedestrian walk bridge is. And this was all covered with dust, and then it moved southward. Again, here
the EPA
pedestrian
did
walkway.
find spotty levels of